Hi lads, welcome back into another video. Like I said yesterday, quick one to talk about the up-and-coming endurance season, how the points are going to work, the penalties and everything else we need to talk about before we start in just 2 weeks now until the first round. So everyone who came and did the test session yesterday, that was really good. We got loads of good info from the new GT3 cars. It was just good to get everyone back in and have a drive round, although it feels like the last round wasn't long ago at all. The next one's not too long in the future. It was just still good to get everyone back in after Christmas. And then talking to a few boys about round one, and it's not gone down as one of the favourable choices by all accounts. And it doesn't matter what you pick, you're never going to keep everyone happy. But initially that round one was going to be the 911 Cup car at Watkins. And so I'm going to go back to that because that car is just brilliant. And although I was going to use 911 later in the season for Atlanta, I switched that for something else. We've got some really good cars. Me and Pierre have worked on a few over the last couple of weeks that we could possibly use. So yeah, we'll figure that one out later, but for round one in a couple of weeks, it's going to be the 911 Cup car at Watkins Glen. So for those of you who took part last season, and those of you who didn't, who want to know how it works in terms of points, to keep it tight and keep it close and keep it interesting, I decided to go 10 points for a win, 9 for second, 8 for third, and so forth. However, it is racing and there needs to be an incentive for doing well, and you should be getting more points for winning. So I'm not going to go completely crazy and go like 25 for first and 18 for second because I think it just separates it too much. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. So if we go 15 for a win, 12 for second, so you get that 3-point difference, then 10 for third, 8 for fourth, so the gaps are getting smaller, and then after that it'll just go 1 point as you go down. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, down as many teams as we've got. So there is the difference between finishing 7th and 8th is 1 point, but the difference between finishing 1st and 2nd is 3. So, it really gives that incentive to go and win. But also, to keep it more interesting again, some bonus points. So bonus point for fastest lap of the race. I know people like to try and get that anyway, just as you might be running around in 4th and, you're not going to get caught from behind and you're not going to catch the guys in front. You're into the last half an hour. You take the extra pit stop and it gives somebody in that position a chance to grab an extra point. So bonus point for fastest lap of the race and a bonus point for pole position. The reason pole position is that, okay, you're only going to reward the fastest drivers. I get that. But sometimes tactically, it's better to not start on pole, depending on the track. And if you're going to make that decision to not challenge for pole position, you're not getting the bonus point. So you puts that into the equation. So it doesn't make it a clear-cut decision whether you should or you shouldn't. So yeah, just to mix it up, we're just going to add those extra bits in just to try and make it a bit different for this year. And obviously, the teams who won last year did the most races, and that typically is how these things pan out. Unless obviously you're fully committed to doing a full season of Formula One as a real driver, you're going to do every race. But obviously, this isn't real, and I can't ask everyone to be here all the time. It's not realistic. So you can drop your worst result. So if you compete in every single race, you basically just bin your worst result. That's just how it'll work. But if you need to miss a race, that is your worst result. So it just gives you the flexibility to say, I don't want to do this, I don't fancy that, or I want to go away here, and it's not going to cost you anything in the championship. So you can drop your worst result, which will include obviously any races you don't compete in, just to try and not punish people for having a life outside of this place. So yeah, we'll introduce that for this season as well. And probably the most different part of this for this season is going to be the damage model and the penalty points. So everyone who competed last season will know that whenever you got a drive-through penalty, I basically cancelled it. And I know nobody was doing it intentionally, but because you knew I was going to cancel it, there's less care taken. Drive-through penalties can be harsh, and this is going down for speeding in pit lane, is what I mean. And there was a point at which we thought maybe the game was given some false positives, if you like, on speeding in pits. And during testing over the last few weeks, I've noticed that occasionally I'll come out of my pit garage in the paddock, drive down pit lane, come out, and it'll say, stop, go penalty for speeding in the pits. I'm thinking, I haven't even turned my pit limiter off. That's impossible. But what you've got to remember with some of these cars is if you just hold the throttle down and you just sit on the limiter and it's bang, 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 bang on the limiter at 80 Ks, for instance, it is sat at 80 Ks. I mean, some cars, if you change gear in the pits, it does something to the limit where it'll allow it to just jump over. And if it only has to go to 81 Ks for a second, that's a drive-through penalty. That's speeding in pit lane. So you're just going to have to be really, really careful. If you want to be absolutely sure you don't speed in pit lane, manually just keep it at 75 Ks. Don't push it. Don't sit on the limiter. And if you're going to sit on the limiter, just don't change gear. Make sure you're under the speed limit when you come in. Make sure you're way past the exit line before you turn it off. For the sake of half a second to make sure you've got it right, it's going to save you a full drive-through. And we're not cancelling the penalties. It's harsh because I feel like nearly every single time it's not intentional, but that's not a reason to not, observe the penalties and serve them. So yeah, the penalties are not going to be cancelled for you for speeding in pits. It's just not. So you're going to have to figure it out yourself. And I don't want people to get annoyed with it, but you just be more cautious. And yeah, I mean, the idea being that if you break the rules, you get punished. And I know no one's intentionally trying to get an advantage by doing anything, but yeah, just something you're going to have to adhere to. Like, nobody intends to go wide by a foot on the exit, but if you do, your lap gets cancelled. It's I didn't do it on purpose. No, I know you didn't, but you still, you crossed the line, you broke the rules, you get punished. That's racing. And we're trying to make it more like the real thing. So that's going to be something you're going to have to just deal with this year, I'm afraid. So yeah, most teams I think are happy with it because it's the same for everybody. Everyone's in the same boat, and it just makes it more realistic, which is ultimately what we're all really looking for. And then on the subject of penalties, again, you'll know that we have a certain amount of points you can accumulate in a race before you have to have a drive-through another drive-through. And I think it's happened twice last year because I made it too lenient. So obviously on the server, I can bring that points down. So normally when you have a little off track or run wide and you don't slow down, it'll fire up quarter of a point or a point. And I've had it at 30. You can accrue 30 points before you get the drive through. I'm going to bring it down basically. And you're going to have to think about it a little bit more. And after us doing some iRacing special events over the last couple of months, we noticed that pretty much everyone has to go through and do a drive through penalty in an event for just going wide and off tracks. But you have the advantage in R-Factor 2 that if you go wide, you don't automatically get a penalty. It's only if you don't slow down enough and give the time back. So you get the opportunity, if you go wide or cut a bit of a curb and it recognises the cut, just back off, wait till that warning goes green and you won't take any points. Like, you've got control of the throttle, so you make the decision. Again, I'm putting it in your hands. But yeah, there will be penalties for exceeding those points, and those points will be tighter this year. Then probably the most important one is the damage. We had a couple of races last year where we didn't run damage on, and ultimately when that happens, it was for a reason to do with the car that I'm not going to go into. It's too long-winded. But what happens is, because you can just push other cars out the way, and I mean AI cars because that's what it was. No one was pushing real people out the way. You don't have any kind of respect for passing people. Because if you do, it costs you time. If it costs you time, you're not going to do as well. And if somebody else is not willing to do it, then why should you? So I completely get that. You take advantage of the rules as they're set per race. But again, trying to make it a little bit more realistic, you need to plan the passes better. It's not just a case of rushing up behind somebody and as soon as you're there, bumping them out of the way and driving past. You need to think a couple of corners ahead and think, where do I need to get the run on this person? So do I back off a little bit here to make sure I get a good exit so I make an easy pass into the next tight corner or whatever it may be? Also, when the damage has been on, which for most races it has, and you can have a big crash, the longest I've seen anyone sit in the pits for is maybe a minute for damage. And although that can affect your race quite a lot, it's not going to be the difference between somebody who's leading and falls back to third and has to fight their way back. And I think if you ever watch any real endurance racing, and because of what we did this season with the endurance series, I ended up watching a lot more real world endurance racing. And so much of it is how you manage traffic and basically staying out the pits. It shouldn't always be that the absolute fastest driver or team of drivers wins the race, because that's not endurance racing. I mean, it can be if you're also clean, but the element of damage is not severe enough here, and having to think a little bit more about sacrificing some time on a lap to make sure you don't hit somebody and take damage, because ultimately that costs you more time. So I want you to think about it a bit more like a real world driver and plan it out. And it should be that somebody who does plan these things better and drives more cautiously, safely and with more awareness of what's around them, you should be rewarded for that, because you are rewarded for that in the real world of endurance racing. So that's how I want it to be. So yeah, I don't want this to drag on too long because I know you just get bored and turn it off. So they're the main things, is the way the points change in terms of how you're rewarded for your results. And how the points you're going to do in terms of how you're going to be penalised for your mistakes. It's going to be different this year. And I didn't want to make it so different that people go, you know what, you've made it too realistic. It's not fun anymore. And I don't think I have. I think it's still good. I think you're going to need to change the way you drive a little bit, definitely. If you weren't getting to these races in the real world, you'd definitely be backing off more than you're doing here because of the consequence of obviously, like, you don't want to ruin someone's £500,000 car. But we're trying to make it as real as we can, aren't we? Without taking any fun out of it. So yeah, hopefully you all agree with it. I'm really looking forward to it. I think adding that element of consequence to bad decisions or mistakes is going to make this a far better season and a more varied season in terms of results. But like I say, I'm not going to harp on about it for ages. 2 weeks till the first race. I mean, technically, I know a load of you are going to enter, but if you can all just actually message me and just tell me for sure which teams are in and which aren't, so I know how many slots we've got left, because we might have a couple of new teams who want to enter. And we'll try and get this full for the first race. I obviously always try and get it full, but if we can have a full grid for the first race, that would be great. I'm happy to run the 9th rig as well. So if we can have 9 teams in for race 1, that would be superb. And if we do have 10 teams you want to run, I could possibly squeeze a 10th rig in. So yeah, let me know if you're in. And 2 weeks to go until round 1 at Watkins. I'll see you there. Thanks again.